All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into what is, for all intents and purposes, a modern-day David versus Goliath story. Using the source material, we're going to explore how one nation is reportedly taking on the world's most advanced military and diplomatic alliances, both in the skies over the Middle East and in the critical shipping lanes of the Persian Gulf.
So, you might be asking, how is this even possible? Well, the sources detail this incredible journey by following a single missile through what is arguably the most intense air defense network ever assembled. Seriously, the challenge it faces is something you'd expect to see in a science fiction movie.
The source material actually calls this the Gauntlet, and for good reason. It's a multi-layered defense shield that's almost unimaginable in its scale. And we're not just talking about one country's military here. No, this is a massive, coordinated effort that involves some of the world's biggest powers.
Okay, so picture this. A missile launches from Iran. Immediately, it's being targeted by U.S. warships right there on the Persian Gulf. If it survives that, it then has to fly over U.S. bases in Iraq, which are trying to shoot it down. Then, it's met by Jordanian air defenses and cutting-edge U.S. F-35 fighter jets. But it's not over. It's also being targeted from warships in the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. And only if, and this is a huge if, it survives all of that, does it finally face Israel's own incredibly sophisticated, multi-layered defense systems.
And this is where it gets really astonishing. The sources report that even with those overwhelming odds, after running that insane gauntlet of firepower, some missiles still get through. A few of them actually manage to breach every single one of those layers.
So this brings us to a really crucial point. This isn't just about causing physical damage. According to the source, for Iran, the very act of getting a missile through that shield is defined as a great success. It's about demonstrating a capability. It's about proving that this supposedly impenetrable defense, well, isn't.
Now, this strategy of challenging a much more powerful force isn't just happening in the air. The source material shows us a parallel story that's unfolding at sea. It mirrors this exact same theme of an asymmetric fight, just on a completely different front.
So let's pivot. The sources describe a very different, but just as intense situation developing in the Persian Gulf, all centered around that critical choke point, the Strait of Hormuz.
What we're talking about here is a massive naval blockade that has reportedly brought commercial shipping to a dead stop. Think about this. Over 1,000 cargo ships just stuck in a huge maritime traffic jam, unable to move. And as you can imagine, that sparked a major international crisis.
Now, the backdrop to this crisis is a really bold claim of total naval supremacy. According to the source, the U.S. president had recently declared that the American military had, and I quote, completely destroyed 100% of the Iranian Navy.
Well, Iran issued a very direct and very public challenge. Their commanders basically said, prove it. They called on the U.S. to demonstrate its supposed dominance by sending its warships to break the blockade and open the strait, a real put your money where your mouth is moment.
And this is where the story takes a fascinating twist. According to the source material, the American response was really not what you would expect from the world's foremost naval power. Instead of a direct military confrontation, instead of sending in the cavalry, the U.S. reportedly turned to its allies for help. The source says Washington started reaching out to other global powers, asking them to send their naval fleets to intervene.
So, how did that go? Well, first up, France. And according to the reports, the answer was no. They refused to send their fleet.
Okay, what about Japan? Also a no? They reportedly refused to get involved.
Then, Australia was asked. Same story. They denied the request.
And then, in what was maybe the most surprising move of all, even America's closest and oldest ally, the United Kingdom, reportedly refused to commit its ships.
So what you're left with is this remarkable situation. As the source puts it, the absolute superpower of the world has suddenly been abandoned by its own friends. It paints a picture of unprecedented diplomatic isolation, leaving the world's leading power alone to face a challenge.
So let's put these two stories together, the missile in the air and the blockade at sea. What does it all mean? What is the core of this asymmetric challenge that the sources are describing?
Well, it's pretty clear. On one side, you have Iran, reportedly standing alone, using its own technology with a strategy designed to challenge the status quo. On the other side, you have this vast coalition, the US, the UK, Jordan, and other nations armed with the latest tech from the entire Western world, fighting to maintain its superiority.
And this really brings us to the final, provocative question that the source material leaves us with. What kind of war is this?
where one side with limited resources can seemingly compete with the most advanced technology the entire world has to offer. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What does this tell us about the changing nature of power and conflict in our world today?